In this week's drive, we catch sight of the all-new V8 from Toyota, follow the fortunes of the Volkswagen team in the Dakar, follow the flame with a Formula One Ferrari flavour, and see what the Red Baron might be driving next year. All this and more in this week's Drive. Michael Schumacher has insisted he is 99% certain to end his career with Ferrari. Speaking at Ferrari's annual winter retreat in the Italian Alps, where a ski run was named after him, he also said he would make an announcement about his retirement midway through this year's Formula One season if he can't be competitive. The 7-times world champion, whose Ferrari contract runs out at the end of this year, has been linked with a big money move to Red Bull or Toyota for 2007.
I think, honestly, I said it very clearly, and I really mean it. It's 99% Ferrari, nothing else. But, I mean, I don't know if you can say you will be 100% for the next, 10 years at your job, in your position. Who knows? I mean, who can look so far in advance, and who can tell what is going to happen, in particular in our sport, where things sometimes move rather quickly. And as I said, I don't want to lie, and therefore I'm saying the truth, and 99% that is what it is, and then we will see.
The 37-year-old said his wife Karina would be involved in any decision he made over whether to retire at the end of this season.
The topics were when I would take a decision, and I said it's about mid-season that I could consider what is the situation, how is the competitiveness, and I clearly said as well that a season as last year, although I had certain fun in that season, but it wasn't all over a good year, and it was at quite a few times it was frustrating, and I'm not really considering to be in this position if I want to consider a future for myself. So I want to be competitive and want to fight for the victory. I said as well, it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to win a championship, but at least I want to be in the position. And if it then doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But it is nice to be in touch with the guys up front.
The winningest world champion says Ferrari are showing improvement, having been woken up by last season's poor results.
Well, we have had various tests, obviously, through winter, and things have, in general, improved compared to what was our situation and position last year. And lately in Jerez, again, we seem to have made another step, and things look pretty promising. We're pretty much on schedule for our program, and we look forward for this coming year.
One man who's definitely not retiring and is in fact at the beginning of his career is Ferrari's new driver Felipe Massa. The Brazilian finished 13th last season driving for the Sauber team, and he was hired to replace another Brazilian, Rubens Barrichello, who moved to Honda.
Well, I mean, I think we can only have one target at least, and that is to win the championship. In particular, after a year of last year, where, I mean, the success was so poor to our standards, and we'd really like to come back to where we had been before, to fight for the championship and may finally win it.
Schumacher also expressed his belief that multiple MotoGP world champion Valentino Rossi could make the switch to Formula One. The Italian, who would be a marketing dream should he choose to join Ferrari, has had at least 3 separate tests with the Scuderia, but professes to prefer rallying and has dominated some crowd-pleasing stadium events against some top rally drivers. After a disappointing season, the pressure is also on Ferrari managing director and team principal Jean Todt. The Frenchman arrived late at Madonna di Campiglio for the traditional winter retreat. At a press conference, Todt talked about Formula One rule changes for 2006, which he saw as being positive and which he thought would help Ferrari's effort in the coming campaign. First, he commented on the lifting of restrictions on pit stops for tyre changes.
Definitely, the return to the tyre change goes in favor of the sport, because I think it was quite sad to watch at the TV cars stopping for refueling without anymore having tires available on the car was not a nice show. I mean, we saw very often spectacular accidents who were completely against the spirit of safety. And when you see all the work which has been done by the FIA and by the teams in favor of safety, that was completely contradictory.
The other main change concerns 8-cylinder engines being introduced, meaning the end of the old V10s. Todt said adapting to that new development would be crucial.
I think mainly, particularly at the beginning, reliability will be crucial, considering that we have to do two Grand Prix with the same engine. But I mean, it's really the same for everybody.
As the team chief was meeting the press, Ferrari's drivers and test drivers took time out to relax on the ski slopes. Schumacher, Massa, Luca Badoer and Marc Genet posed for pictures before Schumacher, an enthusiastic and skilled skier, led the others down the slopes. In the evening, the drivers were in slightly more familiar surroundings, although the cars they were driving were not on tarmac, but on ice. Schumacher and Massa were joined, as in past years, by MotoGP Ducati rider Loris Capirossi. At the end, they all found themselves on the podium, a position to which Ferrari will hope to return more frequently in 2006 than it did in the previous 12 months. Toyota's factory in Valenciennes was the unusual venue for the launch of the Formula One team's new car for 2006. This plant is more used to the relatively sedate pace of the Yaris, the car company's top-selling small car. But the location was used to underline the close links between the racing team and the production aspects of Toyota. In fact, the V8-powered car has already been out on the track, completing a rigorous testing program at Catalunya in Spain since December.
I think firstly, we passionately want Formula One to remain the premier motorsport in the world. And we have two fundamental hopes. One is that we will retain a high level of technology, because for Toyota, technology is not inconsistent with lower cost. We don't actually believe that technology always drives cost upwards. And we hope that there will be more transparency in the sport for all stakeholders.
The team achieved 5 top 3 places last year, including 2 seconds.
Well, certainly after 05, having scored some podium positions, and obviously the first victory should be possible for us. Drivers
Schumacher, Jarno Trulli and test driver Riccardo Zonta are hoping the new car will challenge the likes of Ferrari and Renault.
Testing so far was very successful. I mean, the main important things in November, December testing are usually engine reliability, since it's a new one, and the new back end and gearbox, which worked great. In our case, we have new tyres as well, which takes a lot of mileages as well to get right.
Trulli said expectations were higher than they were in 2005, when the drivers finished 6th and 7th in the championship.
Well, obviously, expectations are higher than in 2005 because basically we feel we are getting better. We have improved everything on the technical side, and also the team has grown up in terms of experience. So obviously we are looking forward for another great season, and hopefully we are aiming for at least a victory.
Last year, Toyota was 4th in the Constructors' Championship.
So far we've been experiencing the Bridgestone tyres in the last few weeks quite positively. Obviously there is a lot of work to do in order to learn more about the tyres and about the way of making them work properly together with the car and setup in general. But the Bridgestone people are very committed, and they're putting a lot of effort in order to recover from last year. And I really feel that we can make a very strong package.
Toyota have a very aggressive development program, updating major elements increasingly frequently, and intend having an updated version, the TF106B, racing at the 7th event of the season, the Monaco Grand Prix. The 2006 Dakar Rally continued after a rest day, but there was little joy among the competitors and support staff when it became known that Australian motorcyclist Andy Caldecott had died of injuries sustained in a crash halfway through the 599-kilometre stage from Nouakchott to Kiffer in Mauritania, the longest of this year's race. The 41-year-old South Australian crashed his KTM and died almost instantly from head and neck injuries. 10th overall going into the 9th stage, Caldecott, who'd won 3 stages over the past 2 Dakar rallies, became the 23rd fatality in the event's 28-year history. The stage itself was won by French rider Cyril Dupre, who covered the course in 7 hours, 55 minutes and 48 seconds on his KTM machine for his second stage win of the event. Dupre closed to within 23 minutes of overall leader Marc Comer of Spain, who recovered from some sticky moments in the dunes to clock in just 4 minutes and 7 seconds behind his rival. Comer's second place maintained his lead at the top of the standings. Third was Helder Rodrigues, the Yamaha rider's best-placed finish since the opening stage in his native Portugal, putting him 8th overall and the top non-KTM rider. On 4 wheels, the day was dominated once again by French driver Stefan Peterhansel, who won his 3rd stage of this year's rally, the 51st stage win of an illustrious career in 6 hours and 52 minutes. The mountainous dunes and clinging sand of the Sahara Desert made for slow progress. Peterhansel had to put co-driver Jean-Paul Cottret to work on several occasions to get his supposedly all-terrain Mitsubishi out of trouble. However, their quick work paid dividends in the end, as the same fate befell their closest challengers and teammates, another French pair, Luc Alphand and Gilles Picard. Alphand, a former Alpine skier, finished 8 minutes and 44 seconds behind Peterhansel and Cottret, and now finds himself over 11 minutes behind his rival in the overall classification, after harbouring hopes of taking the lead at the start of the day. Thierry Magnaldi's Schlesser Ford lost its front end among some rocks, but still managed to finish the stage in 8th place. The all-female crew of Jutta Kleinschmidt and Fabrizia Pons moved ahead of Magnaldi by virtue of their 4th place. The next day, all racing in the motorcycle section was suspended in the aftermath of Andy Caldecott's death. The competitors and organisers observed 1 minute's silence in honour of the Australian, who died at the age of 41. They needed to cover the 333 kilometres from Kiffer in Mauritania to Kayes in Mali, but the riders would do so at their own pace, with the stage not being timed and not counting towards the final result. There was no such respite for the cars, though. Carlos Sainz covered the day's 283-kilometre timed section in 3 hours and 28 minutes to pick up his 4th stage win of this year's rally. The former World Rally champion finished 4 minutes and 8 seconds ahead of his compatriot Joan Nani Roma. Stefan Peterhansel finished the day 3rd and dramatically boosted his hopes of a 3rd consecutive Dakar win. Peterhansel started the day with a 9-minute advantage over Luc Alphand. But by sunset, the Frenchman held a lead of 40 minutes and 4 seconds after finishing in the top 3 for the 6th time in 10 stages. Peterhansel's compatriot Alphand saw his chances of a Dakar Rally victory evaporate after he hit a tree. He made impromptu roadside repairs and would eventually limp across the finishing line in Kayes. But with so much time lost on the day, probably only a retirement by Peterhansel would allow Alphand to reach Dakar in front. Alphand wasn't the only leading driver to struggle on the testing stages, though. Jean-Louis Schlesser, the 1999 and 2000 Dakar Rally champion, moved up a place to 7th in the overall standings despite losing his way on the course. The Frenchman went on to finish 6th on the stage behind American Mark Miller in 4th place and Jutta Kleinschmidt in 5th. After finishing 3rd on 2 of the last 5 stages, and despite some near misses, Geniel de Villiers finally topped the timesheets in the Dakar Rally. The South African set the pace on the 231-kilometre timed section of stage 11 from Kayes to Bamako in Mali. De Villiers consolidated his 3rd place in the overall standings, but while one Volkswagen driver was heading to the stage win, another was facing a premature exit from the event. 2001 Dakar winner Jutta Kleinschmidt hit a tree, and the German, who'd started the day fifth, struggled to reach the finish and dropped out of contention for a top 10 place. France's Bruno Sabi, another Volkswagen driver, took second place on the day, finishing 5 minutes and 33 seconds behind teammate de Villiers. Alphan more than halved the deficit between himself and overall leader Peter Hansel. The two-time defending champion, Peter Hansel, endured a testing day behind the wheel, taking a wrong turn and getting lost. When Peter Hansel finally got back on track, he was stuck behind Carlos Souza on the dusty road. Carlos Sainz, who'd won 4 of this year's stages coming into the day, finished in 4th place despite damaging his right rear wheel. Alain Duclos was the day's motorcycle winner, the Frenchman consolidating his 7th position in the overall standings. Mark Comer increased his advantage over defending champion Cyril Dupre with a 2nd place finish. An American Jonas Street took 3rd place despite crashing on the stage. The next day, Stefan Peter Hansel's chances of a 3rd successive victory in the Dakar Rally suffered another blow when problems to his left rear wheel lost him 3 hours on Luc Alphand. Peter Hansel was the overall leader and appeared on course for another Dakar win. However, he hit a tree just 3 days before the end of the rally. After attempting repairs, Peter Hansel and his co-driver Jean-Paul Coutret were forced to wait for help before getting going again. Peter Hansel dropped to 4th overall after his disastrous run. Alphand led overall from Volkswagen's Kenil de Villiers, with Nani Roma 3rd in his Mitsubishi. Biker Cyril Dupre captured his 4th stage success in the rally to make up ground on Mark Comer, although the Spaniard's lead at the summit was still a commanding 32 minutes overall as the race headed into Guinea for the first time in a decade. KTM riders took the top 9 places on the stage and held the top 8 places overall. Not a good day, though, for Carlo de Gavado, whose bike drowned, forcing the Chilean to make some running repairs and get a lift from some local fans. He managed to retain 5th place overall, but he ended the day much further behind the leaders. After 2 top 5 finishes, American rider Jonas Street had his best stage of the race so far on stage 13, with an excellent 2nd place on the day. But there was chaos elsewhere as race leader Mark Comer stopped to attend to fellow competitor Jean de Azevedo. The Brazilian, 8th overall at the start of the day, was thrown some distance from his bike and was forced to pull out of the event. French woman Ludivine Puy also had a heavy crash and suffered a broken pelvis, ending her race. The day was overshadowed by the death of a young local boy who was hit by a car on the stage, the event's 2nd casualty following Australian rider Andy Caldicott's fatal crash. Meanwhile, Giovanni Sala took his first stage win of this year's race to consolidate his 3rd place overall. The Italian is still more than an hour behind Cyril Dupre in 2nd place, who finished 3rd on the stage. Last year's winner still has a chance of defending his title with a 30-minute gap to make up on leader Comer. Spectators took up every vantage point to catch a glimpse of the competitors as they roared past. Luc Alphand extended his overall lead by winning stage 13 in his Mitsubishi, clocking the fastest time over the day's 348-kilometre section on narrow dirt tracks from Labé in Guinea to the Senegalese town of Tambacounda. The Frenchman became the favourite to take the crown after securing his 5th career stage win. Kenil de Villiers started the day in 2nd place overall and remained in contention for his first Dakar Rally triumph with just over 20 minutes to make up on the leader. Nani Roma consolidated his 3rd place overall with 5th place on this stage, staying ahead of Peter Hansel, who finished 7th. Stage 14 of the Dakar Rally saw chaos as many competitors failed to correctly interpret the route schedule. Even race leader Luc Alphand was among those having to stop and ask for help, but luckily for him, his overall lead remained largely intact due to nearest challenger Kenil de Villiers also having trouble, with the South African looking to Swedish co-driver Tina Turner for advice.
What do we do? What do we do?
We go back.
Huh?
We go back. They are coming all after us.
Where is this mine pist now? Where is this mine? Where is the mine pist?
Here.
It's on the other side.
Yeah. Carlos is coming.
One man having little trouble was France's Guilain Quichelet, who went on to take his first stage win more than 3 minutes ahead of fellow BMW driver and former biker Alfie Cox. The bike riders were having even more difficulty than the car drivers in finding their way to Dakar. After getting lost himself, last year's winner Cyril Dupre tried furiously to point his fellow competitors in the lead group in the correct direction. An impromptu meeting was held on the stage between some of the riders, with Dupre and Paul Anders Ullevalsetter desperately seeking guidance from the helicopter pilot above. Eventually they got moving along the right road, but not before valuable time had been lost. David Fretenier avoided the chaos and took his first stage win of the year. Mark Comer also avoided the scenic route, finishing just 8 seconds behind Fretenier. We'll bring you the final stage and the results in next week's episode of Drive. The Olympic flame, making its way to Turin for the 2006 Winter Olympics, has passed through the Ferrari factory. Torches were exchanged under the wide Ferrari arch at the entrance to the plant, and the flame was given to Luca Badoer, the Formula One team's test driver. Badoer carried the flame on the latest Ferrari sports car, the F430, with Ferrari general manager Amedeo Felici at the wheel. The flame was then carried through the Ferrari assembly plant. The Torino 2006 Olympic Flame Relay is a 2-month-long celebration, with the flame being carried around Italy by 10,001 torchbearers. "34 teams of competitors took part in the second Hoarcross downhill race recently. The teams made their own soapbox races and then launched them down a half-mile course through the village of Hoarcross on a typically chilly -6-degree British winter day. The event was organised by a group of regular drinkers at the Maynell Arms pub in the village to raise money for charity. This year's event attracted over 1,000 spectators, twice the audience of last year, and looks set to become a regular fixture.
Now, all got to be homemade. Chassis got to be homemade, so it's about making it yourself, making it in the garage, having some fun, decorating it yourself, and we've got some fantastic examples.
After months of preparation, kart building and costume designing, the 68 contestants gathered at the top of the hill. With names such as Hugh Hefner and the Bunny Girls, Moa Maniacs and Maverick and Goose, the fancy dress-clad competitors lined up at the starting post at the top of the hill in 34 homemade karts. The only technical specification is that the brakes must work. The first part of the run went according to plan for Stevenson's Rocket, but the fastest section of the hill involved a tricky left and right bend which claimed a number of competitors. The Rocket just couldn't find enough downforce grip, and the hawthorn hedge saved them, but not the Rocket, which was by now a two-wheeler. While many competitors were content to coast down the course waving at spectators and friends in the crowd and taking 3 minutes or more, there were some speed fiends who set out to make the fastest time possible. Eventual winners, Rectum Racing, was the fastest down the course in just 57 seconds. However, they arrived at the bottom too fast for their rudimentary brakes and ended with a spectacular crash. A pit stop party after the day's racing saw a trip to Italy auctioned, to add to the £20,000 already raised for the children's charity Wish Upon a Star. So whether you're tasting the African dust of the Dakar, wishing you were, or glad that you're not, so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive.